Nice to see you. So we are still waiting for people to join, but I think in the meantime, we will get started with the introductions. And thanks, Pierre, for agreeing to lead on this important topic today. And so we ask that people continue to introduce themselves in the chat with your name, country, and organization. And so welcome to the University of Cape Town's Chemicals Network discussion for today, which is funded through Sweden via the Swedish Chemicals Agency, Chemi. I'd like to welcome you all to today's important topic, which is chemicals risk management and utilizing chemicals control and risk reduction tools. And we're very fortunate to have a colleague of mine who will be presenting this. So before we get started, just a few things to let you know. You can join the chat room. You can join the WhatsApp group. The link is in the chat. If you have any technical issues, you can go straight there. We will be using the Mentimeter polls, which you saw earlier. So please do click on the Menti link that will be in the chat. This is a discussion, so it's not a webinar. We will be keeping our mics and videos off unless presenting, like myself and Pierre. The rest of you, we invite you to contribute in the chat, which is at the bottom middle of the screen. This is a non-partisan group, which means you may not agree with what other people say, but we will respect each other, and we really do encourage you to comment. Please do remember to mention your country or your organization when you give a response, as it helps those of us who are engaging with you. So as I mentioned, today's topic is on chemicals risk management, looking at the tools, and we are most fortunate to have my esteemed colleague, Pierre Gubillet, who is a program officer at the Chemical and Health Branch of the United Nations Environment Program. And in the branch, he developed in 2006 the UNEP-UNDP Partnership Initiative on the mainstreaming of chemicals and sound management into development plans and policies. He's also managed the publication of global chemicals towards sound management in chemicals, and he liaises with WHO to undertake related environment and health functions. He's led the development and organization of the first 3 interministerial health and environment conferences, the Libreville Declaration, some of you may be familiar with. He's also been involved with the financed ChemObs project, which I hope we'll have some feedback on soon. He has joined UNEP in 1993, and he also has a postgraduate degree in political studies and graduated with a master's and postgraduation degree in political science. You are most welcome, Pierre. I'm sure I've skipped over a few of your esteemed credentials, but thanks again. And you're going to talk to us today about the LIRA document as well. So I hand over to you to give us an introduction to lead into the first question.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and it's a real pleasure for me to be with you all today. And I think it's the first time that I'm joining your effort, Andrea, and I learned a lot about this initiative, and I'm very pleased to be with you all today and to travel, I would say, for this early afternoon. Through the set of documents and guidance that we developed at UNEP in cooperations with WHO mainly, and other members of the IOMC, this interagency mechanism to manage for the management of the sound management of chemicals and waste. All this should be seen as a complementary set of decision-making tools and guidance. It aims really at helping and providing contribution to get capacity building at the national level with very practical set of guidance, so on establishing on everything that is related to strengthening of institutions, to legislative framework, and we will see later on also decision-making tools in equipping ourselves with tools that will enable us to calculate the cost of inactions with the view to justify all these interventions, which will have a cost, but demonstrating that investing on them will generate return on a good return on investment. So that's all the dynamic of these tools that I'm going to present to you today. And we will start right away with this UNEP, first this UNEP sets of guidance. These guidance that have been developed and funded by the sponsors of your webinar today, the Sweden and the chemicals agencies. We had great pleasure in working with them, and it is thanks to Sweden that we have been able to develop this this set of guidance. So what was the goal here? It was to assist governments toward establishing or improving their chemicals controls capacity. The objective is to support decision makers in their efforts to establish legal frameworks for chemicals control, and the work of government officials involved in building government capacity for chemicals control. It has to be perceived as a complementary element of the first LIRA guidance that we developed on the development of legal and institutional infrastructures and measures for recovering costs of national administrations. This again wants to be very practical, and we wanted to go a little bit deeper on what and build on what the success of this first guidance, LIRA guidance on legal and institutional infrastructure. And next slide, please. So this set of guidance is composed of one information document on the benefit of chemicals control, and that is really a document that has been developed with the view to convince non-experts on the value of getting into this work and implementing the guidance at national level. So it's really an information document for your various ministries who would not be experts in chemicals control. This information document so introduced the three guidance on chemicals controls. The first one on the National Authority for Chemicals Controls, looking at what is needed in terms of structure and how much will it cost to build this national authority. The second is on what this national authority would do. It's all the tools that are there to reduce the risks for achieving chemicals control. And the third one is how would you enforce all these measures that you would develop with regards to chemicals controls legislations. So 4 documents, 3 guidance, 1 information document. Next, please. The information documents on the benefits of chemicals control. First, it defines chemicals controls, which refers to the regulations of industrial and consumers' chemicals before and when placed on the market in the country. So here is that we want to have the maximum impact with the minimal cost to that. So it's to define the strategic point where you would have the most beneficial effect of the measures. And this is really before or when placed on the market in the country. That's what we refer to chemicals control. Governments define manufacturers and importers' responsibilities to implement preventive policies, and they are related to classifications, labeling requirements, information on safe handling, bans and restrictions of productions and use. Next, please. This information's documents aim to provide arguments and to understand the multiple benefits and cost savings of proactive chemicals management. So it defines chemicals controls as cost efficient. It provides arguments for you to help you to convince your skeptical decision makers that this is cost efficient, that it supports resource efficiency, supports trade and industry operations, save lives and promotes human health. It protects the environment, is part of the implementations of international obligations and commitment, and is necessary for sustainable national development. You will find all the set of good, well-developed argument in this regard in this information document. Next, please. With regard to guidance document 1 on the National Authority for Chemicals Controls, the structure and the funding, the goal of this document is to provide guidance on how to establish and maintain a national authority structure for chemicals control. It defines the basic authority functions, the authority size, the staff expertise, budgeting, and funding options. So again, it's not theoretical at all. It can really help you to define the terms of reference of all your staff and so on. Let's go on. You will see how practical that can be. So it defines all the staffing for and provide, of course, all can be adapted, but it's on average what the staffing needs would be in functions of the activities that have been defined. The legislations and regulations development, including development of bans and restrictions. 3 professional staffs are envisaged in this regard, with the activities related to legislations and regulations development, implementation of global harmonized system, GHS, for chemicals classifications and labeling. 2 professional staff with regards to information collection and management and creation of company registers. 1 professional staff with regards to enforcement. 3 staff plus the needed inspectors. Can vary from 3 to 5 on the administrative functions, including the fee administrations. 1 to 2 administration staff are envisaged there, but suggested. Thank you very much. Next. It provides all details on how to estimate the budget of these national administrations, an overview and the general considerations, the legal basis for funding, the financing options, the national budgeting process, cost recovery fees, role of international financial assistance, import licensing systems, fee collections, how to set fee levels, monitoring and enforcement of fees, etc. All this should be also looked at in parallel with the LIRA guidance that also provide a lot of information in developing all the needed measures and text on how to finance your national administrations. Next, please. With regards to the second document, the second guidance, the guidance documents on risk reduction tools for chemicals control, it provides the concepts and principles, which revolves mainly around the precautionary approach, the polluters pays principles, extended EPR, extended producer responsibility, how to prioritize the chemicals, what is needed in terms of responding to the need to implement the multilateral environmental agreements, the various conventions related to the chemicals management, the actions and priorities in other countries, hazard-based prioritizations versus exposure and risk-based prioritizations, all the factors to take into account in choosing the instruments, the type of hazards that you're facing and the level of risk, the actors using the chemicals, the efficiency and sustainability over time, considerations that are needed, and the administrative burden and cost related to addressing this set of issues. Next, please. The risk reduction tools guidance also highlights the core risk reduction tools, revolving mainly around classifications and labeling, bans and restrictions, as well as authorizations of pre-market approval system. And it provides also some additional tools that can be used to reduce the risk. And these are the more information on economic instruments, on informative instruments, public procurement, eco-labeling, awareness raising, substitutions and safer alternatives, as well as dialogues with alternatives. Next, please. Guidance document 3 on the enforcement, how to enforce the chemicals controls legislations. It provides key considerations, the legal basis, including the mandate of the authority, how to secure cost recovery for enforcement, how to prioritize the focus on upstream actors, as well as focus on classifications and labeling. How to develop and communicate clear requirements and responsibilities, how to educate inspectors, provide capacity, and ensure their independency to the process. How to use administrative and civil means to enforce compliance. Next, please. The guidance documents provide very clear, and this could define even the terms of reference that you have all there right away, that you can, of course, adapt according to your specific needs. But the role of the inspectors, the resources and competencies needed, the access to analytical competence, cooperation and support among authorities, strategies for avoiding corruptions. With regards to the enforcement objects, how to create a list of manufacturers and importers to be subjected to the requirement, the data sources that include hazardous waste transfer records, custom controls records, company register for other purpose, as well as, for example, taxes. How to conduct the inspections, what are the various steps from preparations through the appointments, the inspections, to the summary and the follow-up. How to keep your records, your checklist, the inspections at manufacturers and importers level, as well as inspections at retailers, and how to address the violations. All this very detailed, very practical set of information, again, provided in this guidance document. Next, please. And so now what do we do with all that? And this is just the conclusion of this first set of guidance, which we will have the pleasure to discuss further. But this guidance has been used within the African ChemOps, the chemical observatory that we will further develop. But you will see that on the right side, bottom in the middle right side, that the LIRA guidance and the GuideV are within these institutional strengthening and economic analysis and the actions that could be taken under the ChemOps observatory. And here there is the complementarity, is that while we are developing our national capacity in terms of enforcement, in terms of chemicals control in general, and building the institutions that are needed, this ChemOps can provide the economic argument to justify the investments that will be needed if you wanted to develop these chemicals controls measures through the national authority, reductions of the risks, as well as the enforcement. This is what we call within the ChemOps some soft type of interventions that could be parallel, or that could be also developed along with decontaminations interventions or cleaning up, which are more hardcore types of interventions and more costly than these ones. But we will show you later on how this cost of inactions can be developed and how you can prioritize the various interventions through the calculators that we developed under this ChemOps initiative. Next, please. I think that's all what I had to for this time being. Okay.
Thanks very much, Pierre. And there are quite a lot of documents that I hope people will download if you haven't already. It would be interesting to know how many of you have actually used these documents before. Perhaps you could just make a comment in the chat. So we're going to go to our first question. If you have any specific comments on what Pierre has just presented, you're also most welcome to put that in the chat. You covered a lot of areas of what is really needed in chemicals management, and perhaps some people have some questions about some of those components. So is the UNEP set of guidance on chemicals control, do you think, an adequate response to challenges experienced by low and middle income countries on chemicals waste and management? So do you think that's the set of documents that's been presented is really adequate to help countries address chemicals and waste management? So we will be responding in the chat. Pierre, you're welcome to keep your video on and your mic on. We do not expect you to type. Everybody else will be typing, but you can verbally respond to the comments and the questions that you see in the chat.
May I respond to the first question?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, very good questions. So do these documents go out of date? And would you say the advice provided can give basic info for a long time to come? Thank you. Very good questions. Of course, we have the ambition to be, if not eternal, at least sustainable with our guidance document. But no, it has been, it's the kind of measures and practical guidance that can be used for a long while. It's not responding to an emerging and immediate risks. It's not depending largely on new technologies. These are all policy related capacity, basic capacity development, responding to basic capacity strengthening needs, and they should be relevant for a long time to come. I see. The second question, Pierre, which of these documents is most suitable in terms of import regime? I would say, you know, the three documents, it's not that long, it's very practical. And I would say that probably the first one is crucial in establishing your national authority in order to establish the links with the border officer, in order to establish the links with importers at the country level. And you will find very key guidance and informations on how to do that. I would say that the third one on how to enforce whatever you can do is also very important. But this document basically is mainly, as we say, it is at the market entry point of the complex chain of decisions that affects the management of chemicals, and it's for developing countries in general. So they are not yet the biggest producers of chemicals, and I would say that the three documents are made for import, are particularly relevant to importing countries. I see questions. Guyana. Let me, oops. Sorry.
While you're reading that, just to let others know that we have posted the first poll. The link is in the chat. What is the main national chemicals management challenge faced by your country? When you respond, please put your country, and it's an open-ended question. And Pierre, you can, as things pop up on the poll, you're welcome to respond to those as well.
Oh, okay. I see Guyana, the guidance is indeed a very good starting tool for medium income countries, where most of us is now trying to start manage chemicals. It has helped me significantly in training and capacity building of chemicals inspectors. Thank you very much. That makes us feel very good that these documents are useful. Thank you. But I do think that they have been developed with this concern in mind, really to make it directly relevant to your need. And again, it's not big theories. It's very practical guidance. It's not very poetic. It's not that much, grandiose policies, but it is very useful, and I really encourage you all, if you are interested in responding to the challenges at the national level from a low and medium income countries, that is importing chemicals, that have a hard task in identifying who is responsible, what should we be doing. Look at this guidance, try to build some alliance with various ministries, and you should be able to achieve some results very rapidly.
I see we have Emor, Stephen, you've put a question in the Q&A. If you can put your questions in the chat, it's a bit easier for us. So the comment from Emor, I will put in the chat, and then you can have a look at it here.
Yes, I'm trying to follow the order here. Okay, here we go. I think Iran, both yes and no. Yes, because these set of guidance are well developed, and no, because they are not necessarily suited for developing countries. The big problem is that UNEP, for developing this set of guidance, do not give opportunities to scientists from developing countries. From the relationship with from developing countries, and when it gives, it is only given to politics that you imagine in some in countries. True. It's partly true. This aims to build really implementing type of capacity. It is related to policy measures, a practical one again. It does not aim at building this set of guidance, this specific set of guidance, but we will go with the ChemOps just later on, and does not address the scientific assessment capacity. It relies a lot on the assessment capacities that have been developed already in developed countries and can be easily shared. the toxicity, the toxicological results from, there's no reason that there should be a tremendous difference between the effect of one substance in one region to the other, although this could, but let's make the best of the knowledge that we have now without renouncing to developing the scientific capacity of the medium and low and medium income countries. And that's what we are doing actually with the ChemOps. That's to develop this observation capacity, but that is directly linked to the policy effect. It's how we can translate our scientific understanding into economic types of arguments in order to convince the decision makers. That's what we are doing, and we are developing this set of guidance and instruments and tools together to make a package in order to respond to the various challenges related to policy needs, as well as challenges related to scientific needs. And so you will see in later on, hopefully, that we are trying to respond to the scientific needs as well of our developing countries.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd like to comment on the poll. You don't need to read them all because everyone can read them. But I don't know if there's sort of a general comment you want to make about what you're seeing in terms of the challenges before we move on to the next poll.
It comes and goes.
It's scrolling. It scrolls. But we can.
If you can help me as well, Andrea, and just read one questions that seems to you.
Yeah. So Eunice, why don't you pause the scroll for the moment so that we can just have a look at them? If you just hit the pause button for the moment. Thank you. Nope. Eunice, can you just hit the pause of the scroll? You just have to hit the enter.
Yeah, so we see here a set of questions that are definitely coming from our scientific experts, and thank you very much. And these remains extremely important set of challenges. We even with the best all the chemicals mixture is a challenge to the best of our scientific assessment capacity everywhere in the world. This remains a general need to enhance our competence and capacity in this regard. This is not proper to developing countries. It is a challenge in developed countries as well. But what is important is that at least we can make an effort to define what is getting in the country. How can we make sure that what is getting in the countries is being registered, is being tracked, is being ultimately managed as well as we can with the level of information and knowledge that we have. And this will already limit quite a lot and reduce the potential risks.
Thanks. So I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the second poll, but what would be interesting is to see if all of these challenges that have been listed by members and participants, whether what the kind of responses in the guidance documents in relation to those. And you will get a copy of those as well at the end of the discussion, Pierre. So we've gone on to the second poll. Is intersectoral multi-stakeholder participation and engagement perceived as a key condition for an adequate national management system? And again, you could put your country in if you say yes, no, or you don't know, or if you want to make any other comment. And the link to Menti is in the chat. Thank you. So Pierre, I don't know if you saw the comment by Stephen, that I posted there. So it says the documents and guidelines would be adequate, but there are a lot of gaps in terms of capacity challenges for countries. And so how is UNEP strengthening capacity building, especially in low and middle income countries?
Yeah, and this is responding to the questions that is in front of you now on the intersectoral and cooperation. We are more and more realizing that it is not through environmental and regulations measures alone that we can respond to the challenge, and we have engaged with the IOMC, so this mechanisms for interagency, UN interagency cooperation. And the European Union has financed the IOMC toolbox that aims at providing one-stop shop for all the guidance that have been developed. And a special effort should be done now on how we can identify the complementarity between these various guidance and how to make it more palatable, accessible, reachable, understandable within any type of capacity at the country level. We need to continue to enhance and to respond to the various challenges. You've seen here through, again, this set of guidance that we try to respond to the legal, institutional, policy framework. We don't want to renounce to the need to respond to the scientific capacity building need. Again, I will introduce the ChemOps later on. The ChemOps has been developed fully within the implementations of the Libreville Declaration on Health and Environment in Africa. It is developed fully in close cooperation and jointly, not only in close cooperation, jointly with WHO. We will see that in terms of scientific needs, how the ChemOps could eventually revitalize and complement the activities of poison control. So how, beyond responding to the scientific needs, how do we build a bridge between the scientific response and the policy response? This is exactly what ChemOps aims at doing. So we don't have infinite financial means, unfortunately or fortunately, but and that requires that our tools are very judicious and can be. We have to look at their effectiveness in terms of the impact they're going to have and how practical they can be to respond to the huge, complex challenge related to chemicals that remains most of the times for our decision makers the third one in the list of environment priorities. Knowing that it took a long time to convince them on the risks of climate change. It's taking a lot of time to convince our decision makers on the need to protect our biodiversity. And now we need to provide some concrete response, building on the experience that we acquired through these various exercises on climate change and biodiversity to address effectively the chemicals risks and the pollutions related one.
So we're going to move on to the second question. I don't know if you want to comment at all on the poll. You can see that there's been a lot of responses. Yes, that there should be multi-sectoral. Comment about engagement at national, regional, international levels. And also about harmonizing measures towards chemicals management. So there's only one no. Iran does not see the benefit of that, which you can always say in the chat why. It's important to hear why you feel that it's not important. Any other comments you'd like to make before we move on to the second question?
Yes, perhaps a very quick one. The number of yes doesn't surprise me. After it's how do we do them? How do we effectively ensure this fruitful intersectoral cooperation? How do we finance it? Because if intersectoral cooperation is very often praised or wished by everybody, it is very rarely funded by anybody. So this, we have to seriously look at it. And I would say it is also up to us at the international level that we need to demonstrate that these intersectoral cooperations can be effective, can be fruitful, are needed. We have to lead by examples and not only by preaching, and I think that's how we will be able to have an effect on at the country level, and in introducing the various guidance that we can propose. We have to be much more strategic in this regard.
Thank you. Thanks. So we are going to move on to the second question. Zintle, I saw that your hand was up. Please do type your response or your comments. That would be great. Over to you. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. And this is, so bear with me because this is really the final conclusions of this ChemOps project and experience. We are reaching now the 5 years time that was given to us to implement this ambitious ChemOps project. So these are the first conclusions, not the final ones, but you will see that that it is already quite interesting. And so to remind you and repeat again that this ChemOps project was developed within the framework of the Libreville Declarations on Health and Environment. So this conference that Andrea mentioned in presenting myself at the beginning of this meeting. So it is the result of the third interministerial conference held in Libreville in 2018 that has adopted a strategic action plan where we wanted to multiply and to increase the effect of this intersectoral cooperation between health and environment. We succeeded in convincing the financing agency, the GEF, that this cooperation would be very useful. And so they gave us 10.5 million to develop these decision-making tools and to implement it into 9 African countries, 5 Anglophone countries, and 4 Francophone countries. Next, please. So the objective of the ChemOps is to use relevant data and indicators to identify and address causal pathways of key pollution challenges. So it is to develop and prototype some measurement models to provide up-to-date information to better predict, prevent, and reduce chemicals risks, to assess the environmental situations and recommended interventions, to recommend the interventions to be made, to further educate the impacted communities, to finance environmental cleanups needs, to develop and finance new regulations, and to improve the legislations. So 2 types of outputs, I would say, either some operational driven type of interventions or policy, legislative, regulations related types of interventions based on the capacity to better observe, and to better assess the situation and to better account on the various costs that the situations generate. Next, please. Why ChemOps is that with the chemicals intensifications of the economies, it leads to significant costs. The significant costs, they are economic, social, ecological, and are associated with the exposures to harmful chemicals. The potential economic impact of chemicals on human health and the environment can now be identified through the works of ChemOps. This knowledge, which we perceive is vital to support informed policy decisions on chemicals management. So here we see the relationships between the chemicals intensifications, that was defined in our first global chemicals outlook, that takes into considerations not only the growing productions and consumptions of chemicals, but also the shift from productions and consumptions from developed countries to developing countries. And third, it's the mixture of chemicals and the penetration of chemicals into all types of products that are the key factors of these chemicals intensifications. And so we see here the increased economic cost that is related to the chemicals risks associated with this chemicals intensifications. And we have very limited attempt to define this increased economic cost. There has not been so far an authoritative assessment such as the one that was done under the Stern report for the climate change. None have been done on chemicals. We tried in the first global chemicals and second one to provide some estimate of the cost, but very limited one, and that's what ChemOps respond to at the country level. So how could we run such evaluation at the country level and not only at international level through big expertise and in universities of developed countries with few high-level experts that can develop that? How can we bring this capacity at the country level? This is exactly what we are aiming at responding with the ChemOps decision-making tools. Next, please. So we developed some innovative decision-making tools. The ChemOps project allows, for the first time, multiple, large, and rich data sets from various sources to be collated and analyzed using two powerful digital calculators. So intersectoral cooperation, when you develop a project with your colleagues from health, suddenly you have immediate, from an environment perspective, of course, you have immediate access to all the health information and data. And that's what we have been able to do with ChemOps, and we want to further enlarge it. In my conclusion, I will highlight that. But here it's already to immediately gather all the data available from the ministries of environment and experts of environment and experts and scientists from the health sectors. And this will enable us to use to develop a risk and vulnerability index, as well as an estimate of the cost of inactions that we will be able to develop through the two digital calculators that ChemOps developed. This is to provide review, analysis, and reporting that will take the form of business case and investment cases, ultimately that we will be able to provide to the decision makers and investors and financiers. Next, please. With regard to the risk and vulnerability calculators, it has been developed by UNEP's partners by PAN. This calculator calculates risks related to population's variables and site-level environmental information. It looks at the populations and site-level data collected and the inputs. The data is filtered according to gender, the location, the age. There is the algorithm that calculates these various data to produce an index, a score, risks to the human health, the risks to the environment, and the composite risks to human health and the environment. It can enable you to score and inform the policymaking and resulting actions on the various priority, because it's one thing to be able to observe, it's another thing to prioritize the actions. And how do you justify the priority that you want to address through the interventions that you are supposed to that will be financed and so on. So this is a risk and vulnerability calculator to first enable you to give priority in functions of the populations that are the most vulnerable to the risk. Next, please. Along with this vulnerability calculator that gives you the means to prioritize, there is the economic cost of inactions calculators. It calculates the DALYs, the disability adjusted life years, with full-scale intellectual quotient, the IQ decrements, and the associated economic costs resulting from chemicals exposures. So in terms of DALYs and in terms of IQ, that we can calculate this economic cost. It has been initially developed by Pure Earth, that has been contracted by us and modified with PAN UK and the Africa Institute later on. Again, here it looks at the harmful chemicals exposures. It looks at the productivity lost in terms of DALYs and IQ decrements, and the calculators monetizes the cost of inactions in managing managing chemicals at a certain areas or site. And for the first time, a cost of inactions it can be seen by the type of toxicity, the toxicity or concentrations of chemicals or geographic areas, the route of exposures, and the effect on different sectors of society, whether adults, children, gender, how all these various vulnerable populations can be affected. Next, please. So here we have the assessment of the relative risks and vulnerabilities of contaminated sites. We have the chemicals and social environmental data. We use the tools to estimate the relative risks and vulnerabilities that will so enable you to identify the most vulnerable sites and to prioritize your interventions, as I just mentioned to you. That's the first phase. The second phase, we have an assessment of the adverse health outcomes and economic cost. We have the collections of environmental biological sampling data, the estimations of adverse health outcomes and cost, and ultimately we can have a justifications of the investments to be made, and so ultimately to have a business plan proposed that can be presented to your national finance ministries or at the international donors community and financing organizations. Next, please. We made some good progress. So again, this has been tested. We have made the Senegal used it. The Mali, Ethiopia, Gabon, Tanzania, Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Madagascar. All this was, and I would like to remind you, was done under a period that was not easy for us, marked by the COVID. So there was some challenges and little delays. The source of data, there was a lot of challenge to overcome, and I like to thank here all those country staff involved in, because they worked very hard and because they believed very much into the value of this exercise. And I think that not a single one regretted so far to have participated into this effort. We see here that the main chemicals addressed are PCBs, pesticides, and lead, with a great majority of issues related to pesticides. And so you see here that Senegal has used the calculators, that Tanzania used the calculator, Gabon used the calculator, Zambia used the calculator, Zimbabwe as well, and Kenya. Next, please. Case study in Kenya, to give you a concrete example of what does that generate. In Kenya, 32 sites were found to be contaminated through the observation of chemops with lead, mercury, and pesticides, mainly DDTs and PCBs. 3 sites were identified as high risks for lead poisoning, all in densely populated urban areas. These are the 3 sites: Kayole Informal U-Lab, recycling areas. So 2 are related to recycling companies, and 1 is the Dandora Municipal Dump Site, all next, close to Nairobi. Next, please. So from the general observations, then the chemicals and routes of exposures responsible for losses were identified, where we see here the IQ points, and the route of exposures. Here we see between water, dietary, and soils as it relates to lead and pesticides. So it reveals that lead and pesticides were the main chemicals of concern, and that soils and dietary were the routes of exposures to be the main routes of exposures. Next, please. And so the key findings is that all the 32 sites were found to be contaminated, and the 3 sites with significantly higher scores were identified as high risks for lead poisoning. So we see here the capacity to prioritize to a certain extent in between the 32 sites and the 3. The process was useful in highlighting the extraordinarily high risk score in areas where lead and acid batteries are recycled. These sites have common issues that can be tackled in a concerted manner. So that is how already we see the usefulness of the first calculators on vulnerability and impact. Next, please. The economic implications, the lost DALI and IQ points due to chemicals exposures in Kenya were valued at 12 million and 258 million respectively. The calculations used 111 different exposure scenario comprising over 1 million people. Lead and pesticides are major cause of economic loss. Sources should be managed to mitigate the financial implications. That's of course the conclusions. Next, please. The recommendations and policy implications in Kenya mitigate hazards at the high risk sites. The preliminary exercise identified the three sites, sorry, and there is a need to better characterize these sites and develop the appropriate interventions. First, tackle common problems. Particular chemical scenarios causing significant local problems should be identified based on the information gathered for the calculator. Significant risk could be reduced by addressing common problems at similar sites. Identify and address issues at individual site. Red flag feature helps identify sites where chemicals are poorly contained and there is a risk of natural disasters. And extra precautions can be taken, for example, on chemicals packed more securely, moved, or safely disposed of. Next, please. Building on the past into the future, the ChemOps project has enabled countries to develop policies, practice, and sound management of chemicals, building on key international policy framework. Yeah, we see here all the chain of elements. You know, within the considerations now on how to further equip developing countries with national chemicals management schemes as one big priority in the new instruments being discussed now under the new SciChem framework. These types of integrated approach, as demonstrated by ChemOps, could be further encouraged. We are now within the IOMC considering how to automate these calculations, how to make it even more simple, systematic, automatic. And this is the next phase that under the fourth phase of the IOMC toolbox that we aim at doing in order to make it even more accessible to you and not as cumbersome to repeat the calculation systematically. Here it would be to be able to have a software basically on your phone that would link from the border officer down to the nurse and getting all the data sets through the Health and Environment Corporation, but involving as well the agricultural ministry, industry, and all those that would see it relevant to them to enter their data, to enrich this data gathering, and for you after to be able to compute much more rapidly the various vulnerability, impact, and the cost of inaction. I think that's all what I had for our ChemOps for today.
That's fantastic, Pierre. You've covered quite a lot of a long and very involved project, and I'm sure you have stimulated a lot of interest, although I see we do have some people who are part of the ChemOps project that are participating. I see some people posting they hadn't heard about it. So we have very little time for question 2, but I ask, so if we could just have the question slide, please. And we have posted it in the chat already. You can go ahead and respond to it. We will have some polls. But any questions you have for Pierre about the ChemOps program or the tools, please do post them. He will respond to those. And we're just wondering if you think it's a valuable and practical decision-making tool for countries. Would you be able to use it to make decisions and regulatory decisions about chemicals? So I'll see you in the chat and we'll go ahead and post our first poll. So there are several people saying they hadn't heard about ChemOps, so I hope this is useful and the link has been shared to the ChemOps project. And of course, you can always contact Pierre if you have any questions.
Just to repeat, we are just achieving our the objective of our mission now, and more, we need to refine the final data, the final business case in the year, in the 2 next quarters to come in 2023. We aim at finalizing the project by next September. ChemOps, it's integrated health and environment surveillance system for better predicting, preventing, reducing chemicals risks. It's chemicals observation, ChemOps. Again, it's an attempt at responding to your first set of questions that were right on. It's how we can develop our policy capacity without renouncing to the scientific one, and how to make them as complementary as possible. And with regard to South Africa, the data transparency, that's what we aim at doing. You know, if we could have an easy system for reporting that could be shared between the various actors all along the chemicals decision-making chain. As I said, the border officer, if we have registrations of chemicals at the entry point in the market, the importers, as well as the users, and as well as those who are curing, who are seeing the effect of chemicals. So all our health system in terms of how does that finalize in disease statistics. If we could have that in one single platform, that would be a giant step in overcoming the challenges that we are facing. Now, once you have this data, it's again, what do you do with it? And I think if we are able to translate them in economic terms, that can be more convincing to those who thinks that it's not their problem, that it's the problem of the neighbor or the other ministries to address these challenges.
So I don't know if we're going to move on to the next poll. If you can just see many countries are saying access to information is a challenge, except for Iran. Iran has different challenges. Yes, data collection, etc. So I think let's go on to the next poll. And these responses will be posted in the digest at the end of the discussion. So the next one is the economic evaluation of the cost of inaction and benefits of actions, an effective tool for decision makers. Do you think that that's the case? Do indicate your country again in your response. Thanks.
Another dimension with the ChemOps would be to use our first set of pilot countries to become the kind of godfather of this exercise and trainer for the other countries. We have to look at how we could develop such a capacity. That could be very interesting in strengthening the South-South type of cooperation, because it is an initiative that was born, developed, shaped in and on the African continent.
So it seems that quite a few people are indicating in the poll that it would be of benefit. And just to say that the University of Cape Town has also participated in the ChemOps program. We have a master's in chemicals risk management, and we teach various research methods for doing chemical management analysis. And one of them that we do train on are the ChemOps tools. So if you want to know more about that, I'll ask Eunice to post the link to the course in the chat. I think we'll go on now to the next poll. Right, so we have another question for you. Is intersectoral cooperation adequately encouraged and rewarded at the national level, so in your countries, as well as in the international level if you're participating in various of the chemicals management instruments? So you can post your response in the chat, and we'll shortly move on to the next one.
This intersectoral cooperation within the chemicals management is certainly one of the key factors defining the potential success of our future policy and interventions. And that is at the center, I would say, of the discussion now within the intersessional process on SciChem. And hopefully, SciChem could become this platform and instrument framework where effective intersectoral actions could take place. Yeah, I do think responding to Andrea, the question is the set of responsibilities, how to distribute the responsibilities, and making sure that intersectoral cooperation does not delegate all the responsibilities, and at the end nobody is responsible. And it is important to have one or two, ideally, organizations overseeing the chemicals management in a catalytic type of role, being very inclusive for other ministries to easily join in.
So I do realize we're going through our polls quite fast. In the interest of time, there's what are the key determinants to implement an integrated approach to chemicals management, and you can use the link, the Menti link in the chat. Thanks. So I don't know, Pierre, if you want to comment anything on the poll. So people are posting some of the key determinants.
No, I think it's very encouraging, and it's right on the spot. Joint inspections, stakeholders engagement. In Uganda, we've been there, and they are doing remarkable work. Data that needs to be shared, and common to everybody. Taking chemicals to demonstrate that sustainable development policies can be implemented effectively. It's an excellent conduit, because as it was mentioned in the comment also, is that chemicals management is very fragmented on the way it is addressed. Everybody is somehow related to chemicals management, but nobody is overall responsible. And so we are condemned to facilitate this coordinations, this sharing of understanding, of knowledge, of information, and to agree on joint program of actions. This is really key. Now, that's the kind of tools that we have showed today. It's to facilitate this integration. It's to facilitate this sharing of knowledge, and to facilitate this convergence of views over some priority actions, and the need to finance them, because at the end of the day, we can have no teeth in terms of authority, but if you have the capacity to effect the change through your convincing type of argument, it's already a big step done to overcome our challenge. And again, the challenge to facilitate this cooperation is that it has to be either financed or rewarded or recognized or and appreciated ultimately. And that is unfortunately not enough the case. This is an international cultural problem where cooperation is very poorly recognized.
So we have our last poll. There are still comments coming in the chat here as well. So what is the enabling framework? So we talk about an enabling framework as SAICM is moving into the Beyond 2020 process for an integrated response and an integrated approach to chemicals management. So what do you think is an enabling framework? And you can again click on the Menti link to respond to this.
Very good. We see here precaution, prevention, and law enforcement. Definitely. This international code of conduct is actively promoted within the discussion now within SAICM as a new instrument. And I think Andrea is an active actor in promoting this international code of conduct. And that could be an enabling framework indeed, if it is developed in cooperation with the various agencies. The legal framework, as we demonstrated within the GuideEv guidance, the one that we presented in the first round today, extremely good if it is indeed developed not just by one single agency, but in cooperations with all those who are relating to chemicals. And that is key in order to ensure the sense of belonging to this legal framework and its acceptance level and enforcement capacity as well, ultimately. But perhaps one that could be added is again the financing here. When we see the GEF that is finally encouraging more and more these kind of intersectoral cooperations and rewarding these efforts in recognitions that if we want to make a difference, it is through integrated response that involve multi-sectoral actors. As well as public and private sector and various discipline expertise from scientists to economists to legal experts. And hopefully SAICM can stimulate this new dynamic in the months to come, in the year to come, and generate the needed finance for you all at the country level to benefit from this integrated experience and response and implement them in your own countries.
So Pierre, as we start to wind up this conversation, I wanted to, I know you've ended already on a good note with advocating ChemObs. Is there any other summing conclusions you'd like to make before we conclude? And we will be posting some evaluation questions shortly.
No, yeah, perhaps to repeat that we are at a stage now where a lot of attention is focusing on this type of integrated response, and this is within our discussion within SciChem, the future framework. We will be in Nairobi to the resume sessions starting on 27th of February up to 3rd of March. To finalize the recommendations to be made and to be adopted later on in 2023 in Bonn end of September. And hopefully this is a unique opportunity to really share our experience, our frustrations of what has worked and not worked, but what could work, and to make it happen. It's one of the most important discussion to have. It will have impact on the relationships also of other instruments, such as the science and policy panel discussion that is also being held, the one on plastics that just ended a few days ago, the relationships with the ongoing MEAs related to chemicals, but how we as the international community and you as country leaders at the country level are going to demonstrate that we can prevent all these costs, all these pollutions, contaminations. All together, we can make a difference. And this, the SciChem framework can provide this enabling environment, this enabling platform where funders, where practitioners, where implementers can gather, share their experience, and enhance their policy and change the course of actions and detoxify perhaps our future.
Thank you, Pierre. That's a very nice note to end on, a toxic-free future for the next generation. Not sure about us, but for the next generation. So firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much. And I hope you have gained some valuable information from our participants, as well as we appreciated you having the opportunity to share information. This is our last discussion for the year, but we will start again early next year and have many more. And I hope we will continue to share what is happening with ChemOps. There seems to be quite a lot of interest in that. And as I said, if you are interested in learning how to actually use the tool, you can join the University of Cape Town's master's program. So thank you again to Pierre for taking his time. Thank you to all of you who stayed on and participated. Thank you to Eunice and Naomi who were in the background. Please do take a moment to fill in the evaluation question. Are there any specific topics you would like us to cover next year in our discussions? It'd be great if you click on the link in the chat and fill those in. We will keep this open for a few minutes to give you time to fill in. And otherwise, I wish you all the best for the festive season. Stay safe, and we'll meet again in 2023. Thanks, Pierre. And we'll meet you sometime soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea. See you soon. And thank you all.